Stop studying. You are wasting your time. If you're studying the way most students do, you're probably wasting 80% of your time, and you don't even realize it. Ever spent hours cramming only to forget everything in the exam? Most students learn how to study the right way too late. But by the time you finish this video, you'll know how to study effectively and save yourself years of frustration. Imagine you're trying to fill a bucket with water, but there are holes everywhere. No matter how much you pour in, most of it leaks out. Frustrating, right? Well, that's exactly what most students do when they study. They spend hours trying to absorb information, but their brains don't retain much of it. And the worst part, they don't even realize it's happening. Now, let's talk about the biggest mistakes that are making your study sessions almost useless. Mistake 1. Highlighting and rereading. Most students think highlighting their textbooks and rereading notes will help them remember the material. But here's the shocking truth. Studies show that rereading has a retention rate of only 10%. That means if you reread a chapter today, by next week, you'll forget 90% of it. It feels productive because your brain recognizes the words on the page, but recognition is not the same as understanding or memorization. Think about it. If you keep watching the same movie over and over, does that make you an expert on filmmaking? No, you're just getting familiar with the story. And that's exactly what happens with passive rereading. Mistake 2. Cramming last minute. Let's be real, we've all crammed for a test at some point. Staying up all night, drinking way too much coffee, and stuffing information into our brains like it's a suitcase we're sitting on, just to close. But cramming doesn't work long term. Sure, you might remember some of it for the test tomorrow, but within a few days, most of that information is gone. Poof. Here's why. Your brain treats crammed information like junk mail. It throws it away because it knows you don't really need it. You're just forcing it in without giving your brain a reason to hold on to it. And if you think, well, I only need to remember it for the test, here's a hard truth. The students who actually master the material will always outperform you in the long run, whether it's in class, in college, or in their careers. Mistake 3. Studying passively. Another massive mistake? Studying passively, meaning you just read, watch, or listen without actually doing anything with the information. Imagine you want to learn how to swim. Would you read a book about swimming and then jump into a pool expecting to be an expert? Of course not. You'd drown. Yet, when it comes to studying, most students do exactly that. They read the textbook, watch a lecture, and assume they've learned the material, but unless you engage with the information by testing yourself, teaching it to someone else, or practicing, it won't stick. Now that you know these mistakes, how do you actually study the right way? That brings us to the game-changing shift. Here's the truth. Studying isn't about how much time you spend, it's about how much you retain. Some students study for 3 hours and forget everything the next day. Others study for 1 hour and remember most of it for life. The difference? How they study. Most people treat studying like mindless repetition, but real learning happens when your brain is actively challenged, when it struggles, when it makes connections, and when it retrieves information on its own. This is where retention greater than consumption. Instead of mindlessly consuming information, you need to focus on retaining it in a way that actually sticks. The learning pyramid, the key to studying smarter. Let me show you something called the learning pyramid. This one simple concept can change the way you study forever. At the bottom of the pyramid, we have reading. This has a retention rate of only 10%, meaning if you just read your textbook, you're forgetting 90% of it. Next, we have lectures. When you sit in class and listen to a teacher talk, you retain about 20%. Now, let's go higher. Watching demonstrations, that's about 30% retention. But here's where it gets powerful. When you actively engage with the information, retention skyrockets. Practicing a concept, that's 75% retention. Teaching it to someone else, 90% retention. That means if you truly want to remember what you study, you need to stop just reading and start actively recalling, teaching, and applying the information. And that's exactly what we're about to break down step by step. Step 1. Active recall and testing. If you want to remember more in half the time, you need a strategy called active recall. Active recall forces your brain to lift the weight. Instead of passively taking in information, you pull it out from memory, which is what makes it stick. And the best way to do this? 2 science-backed techniques. Strategy 1. The Feynman technique. If you can't explain something in simple terms, you don't understand it. Pick a concept and try to teach it to a 5-year-old. If you struggle, go back and relearn the parts you got stuck on. This shows you exactly where the gaps in your knowledge are. Refine your explanation until it's crystal clear. This works because teaching forces your brain to organize information, making it easier to recall later. Strategy 2. Past papers and self-quizzing. Here's a fact. The top students don't study more, they test themselves more. Instead of rereading, they actively quiz themselves using flashcards, past exam papers, or self-made quizzes. A real-world case study showed that students who quizzed themselves before studying scored 50% higher on exams than those who just read their notes. Step 2. Spaced repetition and the forgetting curve. Did you know that you forget 50% of what you learn within an hour? This is called the forgetting curve, and it explains why cramming fails. Your brain is wired to forget things it doesn't use. But here's the good news. You can hack your memory to remember more with less effort. Instead of trying to memorize everything in one sitting, spread it out over time. How to use spaced repetition in 3 steps. Day 1, learn the material. Day 3, quick review, approximately 10 minutes. Day 7, self-test without notes. Step 3, how to make studying a daily habit. The real challenge? Sticking to a study routine. Most people struggle because they procrastinate, they get overwhelmed, they burn out. So let's fix that with 3 simple habit hacks. Hack 1, the 2-minute rule. This is a psychological trick that stops procrastination. Instead of telling yourself, I have to study for an hour, tell yourself, I'll just read 1 page, or I'll just do 1 flashcard. Once you start, your brain shifts into might as well keep going mode. Hack 2, habit stacking. Attach studying to a routine you already do. After brushing your teeth, review 1 flashcard. After breakfast, do a 5-minute quiz. After dinner, summarize 1 concept in your own words. By linking it to an existing habit, it becomes automatic, just like brushing your teeth. Hack 3. Avoid burnout with the Pomodoro technique. If studying feels like a marathon, your brain will resist. Instead, use the Pomodoro technique. 25 minutes of deep focus, 5-minute break. Repeat 4 times, then take a longer break. Now here's the hard truth. Even the best study techniques won't help you if you don't use them consistently. Most students cram for hours the night before and wonder why they forget everything. But the real secret? Small daily effort beats last-minute panic every single time. If this helped, hit like and subscribe so you never miss a game-changing tip. Good luck with your studies. Now, go crush it!